Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to podcast 71 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers. Also follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by jazzsports.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit Jazz Sports and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, sponsor the podcast, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can come a premium member and get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. Also, some great handicapping sites that I use. For $2 more, you can become a patron subscriber, have all that, and get the podcast a little early at times. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. All right, our agenda is going to be changing, obviously, because college football is over. Well, no, it's not over. We're still getting plays throughout bowl season, of course, championship week here. But the schedule has changed because there are not as many games coming into each week. There'll still be 2 podcasts a week all the way through college football season. And then during college basketball season, we're going back to our college basketball format with the podcast dropping on Thursday nights for your weekend games and articles being written, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday for the earlier in the week games, obviously from the oddsbreakers.com. So there also will be some sprinkled podcasts in here or there. It's not going to always just be one a week. When things happen, we need to talk about them. There's probably going to be different sports that we want to talk about as well. So we focus, I personally focus on college basketball more than the NBA. I will have NBA plays for premium members, few and far between. Usually when I get some information from another capper that's important, or I notice something important, or a big line discrepancy. So that's how the agenda is going to play out. But throughout all of bowl season, we're still going to have our 2 podcasts per week. And then eventually we'll switch it over to college basketball. But obviously we had a fantastic weekend and Thanksgiving weekend. Hopefully everyone's all recharged on Monday here. We were 11-14-1 in college football. Not that great. Some of our larger bets did not go through, so we lost 10 to 13 units, I believe. And we'll talk a little bit about that. NFL was fantastic. 8-4 throughout the NFL. Actually, I believe it was 9-4 if you include the teaser we gave out. And NFL, for some reason, has just been fantastic this whole year for us. Usually it's college football that's fantastic, but we're still up in college football, but NFL is just up 30, 40 units, something like that. And college basketball is rolling. Had a great week in college basketball. We are 10-5 for the year. And college basketball is another, like I said, specialty. So really happy about how college basketball has started. Basically, the way I've been betting them is just looking for overvalued teams from last year, especially in the Big Ten, and fading those and being on some of the ones that I liked. There's going to be a lot more college basketball, obviously, coming up since college football is winding down. It's kind of like the focus starts to change. But at the same time, we're still going to cap every single bowl game coming up for college football. Recapping this weekend, and what a awesome weekend of football. NFL, Chicago Bears finally got off the schneid and won their game by 4 points. And there are some pretty interesting officiating in that game. I tweeted a couple pictures out of some just blatant decisions that they made that they would make any other time. I don't know. Like the hit on Trubisky in the helmet, there's a ref staring at his head going into Trubisky. If you're going to call that in other teams, call it, or don't even have it a rule. At the same time, I shouldn't complain because we gave out the Bears at -3 to members. Probably a lot of people lost. The thing went up to 5.5, 6 points on that game. I was going to buy back at 6, but I just couldn't catch it in time and buy back in the Lions, and that would have been an interesting middle. Although at the same time, my buybacks haven't always been the best this year, but that's just what I do, and we're happy about that. The Buffalo versus Dallas under hit. Thank God. Dallas sucked so bad. They cannot beat a winning team. Everyone thinks Jason Garrett's going to be gone this week. I beg to differ. If they still have a shot at the playoffs, he's not going to be gone. And I'm not sure if it's Jerry Jones' style to fire someone at the middle of the season. I don't think he fired Jimmy Johnson like that. I can't remember. I just don't think that's going to happen just yet. And, Dallas, what the hell? And then the Eagles have a great chance to move up in the division coming up later. Hold my beer. Lose to Miami Dolphins in Miami. They're leading that game and then just blew it. And Fitzmagic just magically kicked their ass up and down the field. So that was absolutely ridiculous. But the last game, the Saints versus the Falcons, I was really fortunate to get that teaser at the end. The Falcons got a bunch of onside kicks, which helped. But that was ridiculous. Like the first one was offsides, and then they get the second one, they score a touchdown, and then they get another onside kick. And I think that definitely factored in. But I was happy that the Buffalo side and the Atlanta side happened, and that was a play for our free subscribers. On the oddsbreakers.com. So that wasn't just a free picks newsletter play. That was a free subscriber play. So I was happy that teaser went through. So I had a great Thanksgiving. The Sunday games were interesting. Like I said about the Eagles, just blowing that game. And then you have the Washington Redskins going to Carolina and beating them outright. Just, what the hell is going on? This is the NFL for you, right? The Carolina Panthers smoked Atlanta when Atlanta was hot, and then they go home and just stink it up and let the Detroit Lions beat them at the same time. Or Detroit Lions, I mean the Washington Redskins. At the same time, the Redskins have a good rushing offense. It was always pretty good, and ever since the Panthers lost their nose tackle, and lots of actually defensive linemen and linebackers have been injured all year. That's their key weakness right there, and Darius Geis just literally bitched him. There's one run where he just takes the guy and throws him. Can't remember who he did that to. No need to mention any names, but that was absolutely...
That's terrible.
And it was terrible, the fact that Washington won that game. But a lot of bad teams won last week because the Cincinnati Bengals finally got their first W, and there are now no 0-loss teams in the league. I thought it was going to be the obviously the Bengals had the chance in the beginning of the year. I thought it was Miami, but now that Miami won, I'm wondering about my season win total under 5 at plus money, because we gave that out back in like May or June. And that thing went down to like 4 or 3.5 or something like that by the time it closed. And I think I'm still good looking at Miami's schedule. But I got to tell you, they're definitely playing better than I would have thought they were going to play. And I'm actually shocked that Fitzpatrick is playing so much this year. This just goes to show you that Josh Rosen is a complete and utter bust. You know, I'm glad that I called that right. I had him as like my 9th ranked quarterback, while everyone else had him as top 3 coming into that draft class. So feel good about that. But what I don't feel good about is the fact that Miami's winning right now, and they should be, like I said, getting draft capital, or at least playing younger guys rather than just beating down old Fitzmagic anymore. That's just my opinion. There's multiple ways of looking at it. There's not necessarily a black and white answer for everything. That's what everybody wants. But the Dolphins have to go play at the Jets. It's a revenge game for the Jets. They're going to have to play at the Giants. That could be a win. Then they play at home against the Bengals. That is a win. And then they go play at the Patriots. So out of 4 games, I believe I need to, they can only win 2 of them for a push, and 3 of them I'll go over. I'll lose that bet. And if they only win 1 more game, then I should be okay there. But 3 games already they won. That makes me a little bit nervous. Going back to some other scores, the Browns just blew it against the Steelers. The Steelers, Delvin Hodges, their quarterback, 14 for 21. The Steelers kind of took control of the game in the third quarter, was up by 7, then they were up by 10 into the fourth. And the Browns, 5-7 now. They're on that nice little run, and huge hiccup here in the division here against the Steelers. It's not looking like the Browns are going to make the playoffs, and they would literally have to win out to tie their season win total, mostly at 9, but I think that sucker was at 9.5 at some points as well. The Buccaneers took care of the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are just in utter dismay right now. I don't know what they're going to do. Nick Foles, he has not been that good of a quarterback. 7 for 14, 1 interception. Then Gardner Minshew came back in, had a TD in, and an interception. So that didn't matter. I'm wondering who they're going to go with forward here. The Jaguars, being 4-8, are pretty much eliminated out of the playoffs in that tough AFC. The game of the week was definitely the 49ers versus the Ravens, and I got to call glimpses of it. I have it DVR'd, so I'm going to kind of breeze through it later. I had to go to a kid's birthday party, of course, so they did have football on, but not all the games I wanted to watch. The Ravens, that was a close game. I mean, the Ravens won at the very end, and we were on the Niners +6 as a premium play, so real happy about that. There was too many points to give to fade the Niners with 6 points. It's way too much, so was glad to grab that. The Rams destroyed the Cardinals. They're up 34-0, and then they put a bunch of obviously their second and third stringers in, and then the Cardinals scored at the very end. But the Rams kind of got their slump buster right there against the Cardinals. Cardinals are 3-8-1, completely out of it now, but they're still building to next year, and they got some good things going. Cliff Kingsbury has been well received, actually, in Arizona. Broncos beat the Chargers. That was a late play for us. They actually won outright 23-20 on a very questionable pass interference call. Now, to be honest with you, I knew what the Chargers defender was doing. It's obvious he just kind of cut the guy off, but they happen to run into each other. He's looking like, oh man, I got to get in front of this guy, but instead he knocks him over. That's just how pass interference is. There's a thin line between a great defensive play and a pass interference. It's just there's such a thin line, between what that is, and very difficult in the NFL. It was pass interference for the definition of it because he did knock the guy over before the ball got there, but at the same time, if it looked like he was going for the ball and knocked him over, in my opinion, it wouldn't have been. And I think the refs blow that all the time when a defensive back's going for the ball and there's a little contact because of the offensive guy too, and they call it on the defense. I think that needs to be fixed. Chiefs blow out the Raiders. The Raiders didn't have a chance. This was a weird one too, when a pass interference was reviewed and actually changed a defensive pass interference. There was an interception too, and instead they gave the pass interference to the Chiefs. It was more of a defensive holding play, in my opinion, not a pass interference play. I mean, they were just kind of running together. They were doing what receivers do every single day, touching each other while run down. That's what it really was, hands checking stuff. That happens every single play, and they decided to review it and call it against the Raiders. So extremely inconsistent there. We did bet the Raiders as well, and that was one of the losers, but was shocked that they actually overturned the play. But it was at Arrowhead, so, there you go. It's just kind of what the refs decide at that moment. The Patriots at the Texans. Oh, and by the way, that game, that wasn't affecting the spread anyway. I'm just calling out an interesting review because normally the pass interferences that have been challenged, they've been shutting them down and saying upheld on the field. Patriots versus Texans, what a crazy game. We just barely got beat on the under at the very end. James White gets a garbage touchdown at the end. That actually killed one of my fantasy teams too because I needed a guy to lose. I needed 3 guys to lose, just one of them, and all 3 won, and they all played top teams. So I was kind of pissed about that, but I do have James White in another league that probably helped me to the playoffs, which was a close one at least. But that was the Patriots. They're still a great team, but the Texans came in there extremely motivated to win that game. Extremely motivated. The garbage touchdown at the end did put them over the total. But at the same time, the Texans had complete control throughout the second quarter, the third quarter, into most of the fourth quarter. Tom Brady wasn't terrible, 24 for 47, 326 yards, 3 TDs. But Deshaun Watson, 18 for 25, 235 yards, 3 TDs. So that was, both quarterbacks just looking great. They couldn't get the run game going at all. James White did a little bit in the second half, 14 for 79 yards, but Sonny Michel was only 10 for 45. Houston didn't need a run game. They threw the ball most of the game, but they were more efficient, and the Patriots outgained the hell out of this team. They outgained them by it looks like by over 100 yards here. Yeah, they outgained them by over 100 yards and still lost the game. But part of that was because Houston was in more of a prevent type defense. So we'll see what happens coming up to the Patriots, but I'm not too worried about them. But Baltimore now has sole possession of the top in the AFC and will have home field advantage as long as they do what's right coming up in their schedule here. So football was just crazy in college football. The Egg Bowl 1-point game was great to watch on Thanksgiving. Mississippi State, they do get a bowl game, I believe, with that win. They are 6-6. So congrats to them. Ole Miss was just playing out of straight respect, and unfortunately their coach, Luke, was fired. And so, God, that team was kind of trending up a little bit too. But, that's just how college football is, man. It's Matt Luke, just kind of had him getting better, but it wasn't good enough. And I'm not sure how many seasons he's been there, but I think it was only 2 or 3. So that's how quickly they want change. In my opinion, you need 4 or 5 years, like I've said many times. Nebraska versus Iowa. I'm glad I bought back on Nebraska because I just kind of saw Nebraska being able to handle Iowa. Iowa had that special teams touchdown that kind of put them ahead a lot in the first, and we bought back on Nebraska for a little bit. Wish I did more, and then was able to get that side. This game was the home field for Nebraska was screaming the whole time. The calls were going their way. That was one buyback that worked out for me, but at the same time, Iowa, that's what they are. They're a team that just never puts the bigger name teams away. They just kind of win by a little bit when they should, and they lose by a little bit when they play the tougher teams. It's always kind of close with them. They're a terrible big favorite against big teams, or against Power 5, let's say, but they are also a very good large dog, it seems. So that's kind of Iowa. Memphis won 34-10 or 34-24. Whoever got the 9-point spread at the early betting Memphis hit that one, but that thing went to 11.5, 12, and then Cincinnati became the right side. Cincinnati didn't have a ton of motivation there, but they're going to be rematching each other with Memphis, once again favored by 9.5. 10 points coming up this weekend. Man, should we just get right to it then? Jim Harbaugh playing Ohio State. Man, they got their asses kicked. We bet Ohio State minus 9.5, and I did buy back some and the halftime on Michigan, and not quite the full bet, but that didn't work out because Ohio State just turned on the gas and destroyed Harbaugh. Michigan can only get 91 rushing yards on the ground, while J.K. Dobbins themselves got 211. You know, and this was even really Ohio State running up the score. You know, they kneeled the ball down at the end. You know, they weren't throwing like Harbaugh did to Notre Dame for no damn reason. I actually saw Notre Dame come up to Ohio State after the game and ask them what they did to Michigan. And Ohio State said,
and my deep runs deep, so deep, put her ass to sleep.
As promised, Harbaugh. Everyone says that you are done at Michigan. Dunzo. But I actually have something different to say. I actually have a different opinion about that. 3, 4, 5, whatever weeks back. Remember what I said? I said Harbaugh is good for the Big Ten. I don't know why. He brings publicity to the Big Ten. He recruits pretty well. But everyone's like, Harbaugh needs to be fired because he can't win the big fucking game. Well, for Christ's sake, who the hell has beaten Ohio State the last 5 years without it being just a complete lucky thing like Purdue or something? Okay? Or in the college football play. Who's consistently beat Ohio State? Nobody. All right? No one. They've been a top 5 team for as long as I can remember, and you're going to punish a guy that came in to a terrible Michigan program in shambles, and you're going to say he needs to go because he can't beat Ohio State, even though Michigan's going to multiple bowl games, you know, even though Michigan has a 9-3 record this year, even when they lost Devin Bush, you know, guys like them. Extremely good players, Rashawn Gary. They have to replace those guys, and you're just ready to fire Harbaugh. That is a terrible decision because the next guy you bring in is going to suck. Unless you're hiring Urban Meyer, which he'd never do that, but if you were somehow able to pay him $50 million a year to change his stripes, whatever he would do. Not saying he would do that, but I'm just saying if that would be the only freaking hire that I could agree with for Michigan, because whoever they hire, they are not going to keep up with Ohio State, and they could be absolutely worse. I thought he was absolutely close, and he had that one game where everyone knows replay showed they were short of the first down. Okay, but don't matter, whatever. The play on the field stood. So, just getting that close, I think he needs some respect. But for Christ's sake, look how good Ohio State's been, and you're just sitting here bagging on Harbaugh. I want Harbaugh to stay. He's good for the Big Ten. You know, I think if Michigan's going to have any chance the next 10 years to beat Ohio State, it's probably going to be Jim Harbaugh because nobody else can frickin' do it. Nobody. All right? Look at James Franklin, how close he's gotten. 0. Are they calling for his head? When was the last time Penn State beat Ohio State? All right? So think of it like that before you go headhunting for that dipshit Jim Harbaugh who runs up the scores. All right. LSU destroyed Texas A&M Texas A&M is going to make a bowl game at 7-5, but 4-4 in the SEC. You know, I don't even think Texas A&M has beaten a top 25 team, but it sure made LSU's juice a lot stronger when it comes to a seeding in the big dance here, the playoffs. A lot of people say LSU should be higher than Ohio State. I don't know, man. Ohio State's the best team I've ever seen. But yeah, LSU has a resume that's probably better because they beat teams like Florida and Alabama, right? So, and Auburn. So, there you go. And going to that Iron Bowl, whew, Bama, they outgained the hell out of Auburn that game, and special teams screwed Saban at the end. Then a stupid call when they're switching out their punter, and then Saban had to run out another player, calling 12 men in the field. That is just a bad rule. I mean, when it comes to those special team situations, I think it's got to be a little bit more understood that it's a lot more of a shift. And look at me, sticking up for Alabama. But at the same time, how can you feel sorry for somebody who schedules their year to not lose? How can you feel sorry for them when they do that? When you schedule FCS teams in tomato cans all year, you deserve to not make the college football playoffs for little hiccups that involve officiating and special teams like this.
Hey, Cal Turd, you are just... I don't even have a name for you anymore, except Cal Turd. How dare you say that about Alabama? They lose a game. And they lost it to a good team. The team beat Alabama. But how can you say, after the dynasty took all these years, all these decades, one game is going to mean that Saban's dynasty is over? You're out of your freaking mind, cow turd. You need to go back to whatever the hell you was doing before you got on the radio. And how dare you call me out? You call me out, you're going to get me back. You hear me, you punk? How dare you? I don't understand the way you act towards... It's Bama. That's what it is. It's Bama. You don't hate any team in this nation except for Bama. And you know why? Because they're better than what you've got. Nick Saban is a better man than you are. You could never coach because you don't have a bit of coaching in your body. You have nothing but to sit there and insult and down and just carry on about everybody that's doing something different than you. You're jealous. That's the bottom line. You're jealous. And Bama's coming back. Bama has not lost. The dynasty is not over. Do you hear me, Countered? Bama's dynasty has just begun. Kiss my butt. Roll Tide.
Unders weren't that good for me this week. Part of the reason I was 11 and 14. You know, the weather unders killed me. I had huge value on Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State. I think it closed at like 45 and a half, under 50. And, I mean, the game was so hard fought, rivalry week, and it went over at the very end there. Western Kentucky gets the go-ahead touchdown. You have teams like Kentucky playing Louisville, Kentucky going for it on fourth down when they have a 10-point lead in the second quarter on the 40, not getting it, and Louisville getting a garbage touchdown. Well, not garbage because it's the second quarter. A touchdown, just like a 70-yard run, you know, in a rainstorm. I mean, we didn't bet the Wisconsin under, but that thing went way over, as you could see, in a snowstorm and windstorm, you know. And then the overs that we bet, Southern Miss could only score 7 points the whole second half against Florida Atlantic. 7 points. We missed it by 3 points. You know, I mean, that's kind of the week it was for me. Had huge line value on so many of these college games, and the weather didn't affect it. How about Colorado? You know, Colorado's a cold, supposed to be wet, snowy game. Lots of people, 99% of the money on the under. Sharp money. Going over. Absolutely ridiculous. Bama went to 93 points. You know, that game. I mean, Baylor versus Kansas, bad weather. Baylor went 61-6. Crazy. How about Penn State only up 7-3 against Rutgers in the first half? Everyone's saying Penn State's going to just beat the shit out of them because they lost to Ohio State. No, their dreams were crushed. The other half came in. The dream crusher, because they really thought they were controlling their own destiny until they played Ohio State. And then instead of getting mad and beating Rutgers, you can see the team was just devastated. You know? Oregon State won for us, at least. It was a free play that we gave out. And that was like, game was a lot closer than people thought, you know. Oregon State really hung in that. It was only down by 7 in the fourth quarter there. Notre Dame Stanford went over all the way up to 69 points. Wasn't the greatest weather for that game, too. You know, so I'll tell you, weather doesn't do it all, especially in these rivalry weeks. And, you know, I paid for it a little bit, but at least we're having a great year in football. NFL's been fantastic, and we're still up some units in college, so real happy about that. West Virginia, by the way, just pushed my season win total. I thought I had them under 5.5, and we crushed in season win totals, by the way. But if you remember from the podcast earlier, most of our things hit. The only ones that really didn't were Florida International, and there was one more that didn't hit. I can't remember. But West Virginia pushed, and I'll tell you this: they're 5-7. TCU looked like the flat team. If they bring a 5-7 bowl team in because they have to, bring West Virginia in. They had nothing, a new coach, and they won 5 games. Bring them into the bowls. They deserve it. Absolutely deserve it. And then, yeah, Texas beat Texas Tech by a lot, 49-24. A lot of people were on Texas Tech that game. So that whole Texas Big Brother thing finally showed up. It didn't really show up the week before when I needed them. But you know, Texas Tech is 4-8, and they're not going to make a bowl game anyway, I guess. Sometimes that happens. We have some huge games coming up this week, though, and it's championship week, and we have already made some plays. But first, I want to discuss some of those futures that you know we have. I have a small sprinkle on Baylor at 350-1 to win the national championship. So if they win this game against Oklahoma, they're probably in the playoffs. I don't know how you can keep them out. I guess if Utah wins, then maybe you do keep them out. But you know, that's a really small sprinkle. But more importantly, I have a larger play. I'm 26.5 to 1 to win the Big 12, and I'm waiting for that spread to go down. Oklahoma's favored about 9.5, which is like about minus 350. So I can still make some money on that, obviously with the hedge, but it'd be a large hedge. I'd be putting out, 10, 12 units just to get like 2 or 3 back. So I'm going to wait till that spread gets down to about 7.5. I think Baylor's the right side on this one, and I think the money's going to come in on Baylor throughout the week, so I'm going to wait to hedge that. We have Wisconsin at 15-1 to win the Big Ten. And obviously we made money because we had that at 3.5-1 and Minnesota at 5-1 to win the Big Ten West, if you remember. But the problem with this is I also had Minnesota at 70-1, and I can't get those units back laying minus 850. I could barely, not even quite break even by laying that. And who knew Ohio State was going to be this damn good? I knew they were going to be good and probably win the Big Ten, but I didn't think that they'd be laying minus freaking 800 against Wisconsin or Minnesota. I thought it'd be like minus 300, being favored by like 9. No. I mean, so unfortunately, the way I'm going to hedge the Wisconsin 15-1 to win the Big Ten is I'm going to try to live bet it. And because I don't care if I lose that unit, whatever. And I'm not laying 850, but there might be a chance maybe Wisconsin, maybe Ohio State's not as motivated Wisconsin is, and it's another 10-7 game in the third quarter like it was at Ohio State or something. You don't know. So I'm going to roll the dice on that one. I think it's best to do it that way. And if you took Wisconsin as well, that's the way I would recommend playing this one, just because it's just, it's football any given Saturday, whatever you want to say. There's a shot at that. And I have the same kind of problem with Cincinnati because I have them at 7-1, and they're playing Memphis, and they're laying about -350 as well. As well as like Baylor, the spread's around the same. So Memphis is favored -350 on the money line. So I'm going to wait and see if Cincinnati gets bet down as well. I think they will, and I think we have a shot there to hedge. If not, I might just live hedge that as well. But I think that spread should be around. See, Memphis has got a lot of momentum though, so I'm not as sure about this spread moving either. But they have a lot of. I think the spread in my power ratings has it more of a 7-point spread rather than a 10-point spread. My power ratings have Memphis as the number 19th best team in the nation here. Okay. So I'm kind of around the market for them. And I have Cincinnati not too far down. Memphis is about 10 points better than the average team. And Cincinnati is 7 points better than the average team. So being played at Memphis, 6-point spread is what I really have. So the play I would make is Cincinnati here in a game like this. But the spread is a lot higher than, what that shows. And I can't really bet Cincinnati here because of my future play. But Cincinnati would be a play, most likely. And I gave that out to members. So let's see what Sagarin has. I believe Sagarin's probably not too off from what I am. Cincinnati. They have them as the 32nd best team. I have them at 33rd at 78. And Memphis, they have as the 18th best team at 83.44. So let's just round it, 78 and 83. 5 points better and 3-point advantage. That's 8-point spread. So, yeah, they're past the key number from 6 to 8. But that just shows you that Cincinnati should be the right side here. I'm definitely going to wait on that one. So my San Diego State play was covered at least. That future I took was covered by the larger over-season win total I took, and they beat BYU, and I got plus money, plus 120 on over 8, and it was double the size. Same with Kent State. When I had them at plus 160 to go over 4 games, it was over double the size play on there to win the MAC at 55-1, so that worked out well. The only ones I lost was Troy and FIU. So great year for futures, great year for season win totals, and I'll give you the better stats on it when it's all said and done. Let's move right into college football misleading final scores. And this is probably going to be, I'll talk about misleading final scores throughout the whole season, but this is going to be the last one. There's no betting spots. Every team should be motivated, in their championship game this week. But misleading final scores, we have Western Michigan versus Northern Illinois. Western Michigan outgained Northern Illinois by 98 yards, yet lost by 3 with an even turnover ratio. So couldn't believe Western Michigan lost to Northern Illinois. They blew their chance to play in the MAC championship game. Ole Miss versus Mississippi State. Ole Miss outgained Mississippi State by 66 yards, yet lost by 1 point due to a 3-1 turnover ratio. Georgia State versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern only outgained Georgia State by 62 yards, yet won by 28 points. And that one hurt because that was a large play by us. So the reason we bet Georgia State plus 7.5, and it closed at 7, had little line value there, is that Georgia State beat a better option team earlier in the year. When the rule is if a team plays an option team earlier in the year, especially if they beat them, they're ready for the option more than anybody else. Yet Georgia State really didn't show up that game, and unfortunately they got their butts kicked. Couldn't even cover the 7.5. So bad efficiency really by Georgia State there. Only outgained by 62 net yards. 28-point difference. Boise State versus Colorado State. Colorado State outgained Boise by 35 yards, yet lost by 7 due to a 2-0 turnover ratio. Washington State versus Washington, another loser of ours. Washington State was only outgained by 3 yards, yet lost by 18 due to a 3-1 turnover ratio. And I watched this game. It was just terrible red zone efficiency by Mike Leach's team. They could not punch it in. And I guess the truth is Washington is a good red zone defense. And some crazy news today. Chris Peterson, the coach of Washington, is stepping down. I believe it's due to some stress. In my opinion, he's probably shooting for a different coaching position. He probably wants to take a year off and maybe coach maybe an SEC program or a USC or something. Who knows? It just feels like he's taken some time off, and I think that he's done at Washington. West Virginia versus TCU. TCU outgained West Virginia by 53 yards, yet lost by 3 points. And they also won the turnover battle. So that one, another loser of ours. But West Virginia, like I said before, is the one that deserves to be in a bowl. Wake Forest versus Syracuse. Wake outgained 'Cuse by 131 yards, yet lost by 9 in overtime due to a crazy touchdown return. It was an awesome finish and actually a bad beat that actually went our way. We bet the over. These teams couldn't punch it in the whole game either, even playing extremely fast. Lots of possessions, I think over 80. But it took overtime to make that thing hit. Alabama versus Auburn. Bama outgained Auburn by 161 yards, yet lost by 3 points. 2-1 turnover ratio and a mixed field goal really hurt Alabama bad. They are out of the playoffs. Someone please call Phyllis.
The dynasty has just begun!
Oregon State versus Oregon. Oregon State outgained Oregon by 15 yards, yet lost by 14 with an even turnover ratio. Oregon did have control of the game, but it was a big spread. Tulane versus SMU. Tulane outgained SMU by 92 yards, yet lost by 17. And that game was pretty close until the end. So bad efficiency there for Tulane. BYU versus San Diego State. BYU outgained San Diego State by 147 yards, yet lost by 10. 3-0 turnover ratio hurt them, but I did hit our San Diego State team win total over 8 at plus 120. Looking to fade them in their bowl game, by the way. Probably both these teams, but definitely San Diego State. Arizona versus Arizona State. Arizona outgained ASU by 50 yards, yet lost by 10 due to a 3-0 turnover ratio. If Arizona is not in this column, then something is wrong. Army versus Hawaii. Army outgained Hawaii by 46 yards, yet lost by 21. A 2-0 turnover ratio did them in. Army has not been that disciplined team that we all knew. They've been turning the ball over a ton this year. All right, well, it's time for your free college football play for bowl week. And we are going right to the Pac-12 championship in Santa Clara, California, where Utah is taking on Oregon. The spread is 6.5. And 6.5 is too high, my friends, because Utah is in a situation now away from home. They're a fantastic home team, but they can slip a little bit when they get on the road. They have had a extremely easy schedule, and that's built into their huge yard per play discrepancy of 2.7. They've played teams like BYU on the road for the first game. Then they lost at USC on the road. Then they played Oregon State on the road and destroyed them. That was a good one. Oregon State was a pretty good team. Then they go to Washington and only win by 5 points in a nail-biter. Then they go to an easy Arizona team on the road. The other games were UCLA at home, Cal at home, Arizona State at home during the rain, Washington State at home, Idaho State at home, Northern Illinois at home. Not so impressive, and they finally finished off Colorado at home. And Colorado was actually covering that game until the very end. Oregon, on the other hand, is more battle-tested. They played Auburn in the beginning of the year. Then they just blew away Nevada and Montana, of course, but had to go to Stanford, at Washington, at USC, at Arizona State, and played Washington State, played Cal. Only lost 2 games all year, and that was to Auburn and Arizona State. One against their rival Oregon State last week. They only have 2 losses. Only 2.5, 3 weeks ago before they lost to Arizona State there, right before Thanksgiving week. We were talking about Oregon being the one that might get screwed into the playoffs. Well, what's changed so much since then? Why is this a 6.5-point spread on a neutral field? You have to understand that there is a lot of pressure on Utah here. Something that they're not used to. They're not in this spot playing to get into a playoff game. And what's even worse is that they're not even sure they're going to get in because Georgia can beat LSU and they can get screwed by a committee that's known for, favoring Southeastern teams. The thing about Utah, they play on Friday night. They play this game. So they're playing first. So they can't even at least see if Georgia's going to beat LSU. So this could be an all-for-nothing thing if they do beat Oregon, and they might get screwed because of that USC loss, even though Georgia had a worse loss in South Carolina. Actually, it was at Georgia. But, so the fact that they're not guaranteed just puts a lot of questions into this game, while Oregon, it's not like they're giving up. They already had their hopes crushed a couple of weeks back when they lost to ASU. They're past that now. They're looking to win a Pac-12 championship, and their team travels great. Utah gets 5 yards per rush. Oregon gets about 5 yards per rush. Utah's defense shows a little bit better, only allowing 11 points per game, and Oregon allows 15.8 points per game. Yet, as we know, Oregon had to play a little bit harder of a non-conference schedule there. So, in my opinion, this game is going to be closer than 6.5 points. I have this around a 3-point spread. Utah should be favored by 3 points, so we are giving out Oregon to take the points and sprinkle that money line. I think this would be a fantastic game to watch. Now let's get into a little fantasy football. Week 14, your playoffs with D Nasty. Now it is time for some fantasy football. Week 14 playoffs. What's up, Dave? D Nasty.
What's up?
D Nasty's back to break it down for us, of course. And this episode is being brought to you by Thrive Fantasy DFS, a fantasy site with prop betting. For a $10 bonus, please visit theoddsbreakers.com/thrive-DFS. David, huge week this week, my man. Obviously, no bye weeks. I had some ups and downs myself in this week. How did it go for you?
Good. I'm beating you in my league this week, so it makes it all that much better.
Yeah, I'm still in first, though, and you're going to limp into the playoffs, so good job there. Your team finally blew up. I don't know how Lamar Jackson and fighting for a last spot. That's probably called bad roster management from what I can see. But yeah, well, I mean, I looked at your points for, and there's a little bit more to it than that, but the fact that you're making the playoffs is huge. Unfortunately, in my league, the fourth, fifth, and sixth place teams, I was 7th at 6-6. They're all 7-5. They played the first, second, and third teams, and the first, second, and third teams, all 3 of them lost against the 4th, 5th, and 6th team, making me the odd man out, unfortunately, which is complete bullcrap because my points for was so much more than them. That is kind of how fantasy is, and it pissed me off a little bit. But my D Nasty sleeper of last week, I did start him. He did get me enough points that it would have taken me to the dance had one of those losses occurred. D.D. Westbrook, he scored that touchdown. I believe it was Minshew that threw it to him because they were getting their butts kicked by Tampa all game, and I was pretty happy about him coming through. Another guy that came through that I mentioned was Mitchell Trubisky. He had a pretty good game last week, and I think one that I mentioned and you agree with, Beasley had a beast of a game against his former team, the Cowboys, didn't he, Dave?
You did, and my two D-Nasty picks as well, Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary, both had huge weeks as well.
Yep, they did. So hopefully our listeners got something from that. That's why we do this. Have fun talking about fantasy. I love talking about fantasy. I talk to myself about fantasy, and the research we put in, it's just fun, and I'm sure our listeners know a ton about it anyway. And it's always nice to hear from other perspectives, because I'll listen to other people and forget about things, and just all of a sudden something I didn't think of pops up. That happens all the time. So hopefully people have benefited from that, Dave. And thank you very much for being in the whole year as usual. And let's get started right away with key injuries. Dave, who do you have?
Well, actually, a big key injury tonight, actually. Dalvin Cook left halfway through the game tonight with a shoulder injury, and he's getting an MRI. So not very good for Dalvin Cook. That's one of the biggest injuries. Quarterback Baker Mayfield underwent x-rays on his throwing hand for contusion. He should be fine for this week, though. Greg Olsen suffered a concussion on a hit from Redskins linebacker Ryan Anderson, who was ejected actually for the hit as well. Miami Dolphins running back Kalen Ballage suffered a leg injury. He did not return, and actually Laird took over for him, the running back. Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Chester Rogers left with a knee injury. No further information was available on him. And that's all, really. There was a quiet on the front for injuries again this week. Oh, actually, another one of note was Darrell Williams with a hamstring injury. We'll get back into his backup here shortly on the pickups list, but that's another key injury this week.
Absolutely. Watch for him. And then, obviously, you're going to have to... Shady McCoy is probably going to pick up mostly where he, fit in a little bit. Damian Williams has kind of been beat up, right, Dave? So
he's got rib injury still, so he's questionable actually for this week as well.
Yeah, he's so picking up Darwin Thompson is also right now a questionable thing to do. I have T.J. Hawkinson. Did you mention him? He's out for the season. So his ankle's that bad. He's getting a second opinion, but right now they're saying out for the season. And Chester Rogers, you did mention him. His knee, he's likely out for the season, from what I'm seeing. Now, it's not like Rodgers was fantasy gold by any means, but the Colts are getting really thin at wide receiver. So, agree with you there. Greg Olsen, tight end, with a concussion, and he's just to be monitored. So, Dalvin Cook, man, that's something to worry about. I have him, but I have handcuffed him with Alexander Madison starting out the waiver wire. For Dalvin Cook, he's going to be the guy that gets most of the carries there. Anthony Miller off the waivers, 13 targets against the Lions. He's been really getting a lot more targets for the Bears lately, so he's probably borderline must be owned. Patrick Laird, he outtouched Myles Gaskin for the Ballage injury for Miami, so he's a flyer, but I don't like his matchup coming up this week. But he's a flyer if you need someone, Alan Lazard, wide receiver, gets to play the Redskins. So that's huge. He's been kind of Rodgers' sneaky target. He's been one that's been left open, gets deep sometimes. So you got to – I like Lazard, especially this week in his matchup here. Who else we have? I have – Peyton Barber, he got 17 rushes last game and 2 TDs. So now it's between that Jones and Barber problem that Tampa goes through, and they're playing the Colts this week. Javon Wims had 6 targets for the Bears, and that's more of a dynasty league thing. If you're looking for some dynasty help, he could be someone big if the Bears decide to trade Robinson for a higher draft pick, which there's been some whispers about that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple defenses that I like here. And the reason I'm giving you defenses is because this is the playoffs. Picking up a defense from the waiver wire can get you some serious points, And I just mentioned the ones that should be on the waiver wire owned in less than 50% of leagues. And there's quite a few of them. The Houston Texans are playing Denver. So, rookie quarterback over at Denver, very possible beating up Drew Lock over there. Dallas's defense, they get to play the Chicago Bears. You know how Mitch is. He can be a turnover-prone person, and the Bears do not score a lot of points. Cleveland defense gets to play the Bengals. The Bengals will be in a letdown spot after their first win of the season. So Cleveland's D is a good one to pick up. Green Bay's D gets to play the Redskins, and you know Dwayne Haskins could be very turnover-prone. And the Colts D gets to play Tampa. If you're feeling lucky with famous Jameis, he's due for a pick six again, as we all know. Lastly, maybe the most important pickup this week is Zach Pascal, wide receiver. If T.Y. Hilton doesn't go, he might be the only pass catcher for the Colts this week, Dave. Who do you have, my man?
The guy I like this week, another Colts guy going up after your Pascal pickup, is actually Jordan Wilkins. Jonathan Williams has been a nice person to have the last couple of weeks, but he fell off this week. He only had 16 snaps, and Wilkins saw 30 snaps, his highest total of the season, by a significant margin. And Nyheim Hines also had 31 snaps. So Wilkins and Hines would be nice pickups this week. Looks like Williams is taking a back seat to them maybe going forward. Raheem Mostert. For the 49ers. He had a huge game this week. He had 146 rushing yards, a TD, and 2 receptions for 8 yards. And he got most of the carries, and he had a 40-yard touchdown. He had team-high 19 carries this week. So definitely want to look into him. He might have passed up Coleman, actually. And then, actually, I do like Barber a lot this week. Rojo did miss a blitz pickup, and that's what Arians benched him for. So he actually was benched due to that. So he should be back this next week, splitting carries with Barber, or maybe even getting more carries again. So I'll be a little bit leery about Barber, but that was the reason why Barber did get more carries and the 2 touchdowns this past week. And then another guy for the Colts, going with the theme of no receivers for them, is Jack Doyle. With Ebron out for the rest of the year, Jack Doyle is going to be the main guy there. He had 6 receptions, 11 targets, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Very good stat line for him. Then I'm going to keep on the theme of tight ends with Mike Gesicki. He's had 3-4 nice weeks now, very solid fantasy weeks. And this past week he had 5 catches, 7 targets, 79 yards, and a touchdown. So, and they have a good matchup as well at the Jets. So definitely a guy you want to take a look at too. And I do like James and Patrick Laird for the Dolphins. It sounds like with Blowout, he's going to be the main guy there. And then another tight end. I have a tight end theme this week, actually. But Tyler Higbee. With Everett out this week, he went off. He had 7 receptions, 170 yards, and a TD. When Everett was playing, they went to him quite a bit as well. So the Rams do like their tight ends this year. So Higbee would be my last tight end that I'm going to talk about this week. But those are the pickups of the week for this week. And then, of course, actually, Alexander Madison, like Kiev was saying as well, a huge pickup this week. And Darwin Thompson, too, with those key injuries.
You know, Tyler Higbee pisses me off. I was so high on him coming out into the draft, and then I was drafting him in some fantasy leagues the last few years, and he just did not pick up, and now he's finally starting to. He played for, I believe it was when Jeff Brom was coaching Western Kentucky, and the guy was a beast. I was watching those games, probably one of the few people that watched Western Kentucky games, and I thought that this guy was going to be a beast, and now he's starting to turn up. It's kind of be like, it's kind of like Godwin. Godwin took forever, I feel like the same about Higbee, man. It pisses you off. I guess Dynasty Leagues, if you have the patience, the people that waited on him probably really did pay off. So good for people that did that. Now, there's also Amir Abdullah, I just want to mention real quick, for the Vikings. He's going to probably pick up a lot of those pass catches that Dalvin Cook was going to get. But we got to wait on Dalvin Cook too, right? Let's kind of just see if this MRI comes through. It could just be week to week or day to day even, for the Vikings. So hopefully it's like that. Why don't you get into non-starters trending up for week 14?
All right, great. Some of the players I like for trending up this week are going to be Kareem Hunt, is one of my favorite guys this week, playing the Bengals. He's not normally starting Nick Chubb as usually, but he has scored in consecutive weeks, and he is looking a lot better, and he's getting quite a few catches too. So in your PPR leagues, Kareem Hunt is a guy who's trending up right now with the Browns with a good matchup. I also do like Curtis Samuel. He had a good week this past week as well. Most people have been starting DJ Moore and reaping the benefits from him, but Curtis Samuel is a guy I like this week against the Falcons. And then another guy, Anthony Miller. He's actually had a couple nice weeks as well. You forgot to mention him. You mentioned Wims, but I do like Anthony Miller for the Bears. He's actually been playing very well, and I like him against the Cowboys this week, playing at Chicago as well. So a nice matchup there. Patrick Laird, I do like him this week if Balaj is out against a poor Jets defense. I like that matchup a lot. And then Broncos, Drew Lock. I do like him this week against the Texans. Their pass defense is very poor. He could have a nice week for his second start this week against the Texans. I do like that matchup as well. Alan Lazard, he's another guy trending up too, like Kiev was talking about in the pickups. I like him against a poor Redskins defense. And then I do also like Benny Snell. He actually has 2 straight weeks with leading the carries in the backfield there. If Connor is out again this week, I do like Benny Snell a lot against the Cardinals. And James Washington. James Washington's had some nice last couple weeks as well. So I do like James Washington as well there too. And then Ryan Tannehill, if you're not starting, you probably should be. Ryan Tannehill's had like 3-4 good weeks in a row, and they've won quite a few games with him starting as well. So definitely another guy I like this week. And then also Miles Sanders, my D-Nasty sleeper of the week from last week. I do like him against the poor Giants team this week. And then actually Carson Wentz, who you're probably starting already, but I do like him as well this week, as well as Alshon Jeffrey against the Giants.
Yeah, I agree with most of those. There's one or two I don't, but definitely love the Lazard one. I think versus the Redskins, he's going to possibly get a sneaky touchdown there. I have Devonta Freeman versus a very bad Panthers run D, and since they lost some of their defensive tackles, they've been even worse. And as a matter of fact, the Redskins ran all over them with Darius Geis, as you know so well, Dave, starting him in your league. So I like Devonta Freeman. He wasn't a starter for most people lately because Atlanta's been so bad, but I think they play at home here, and so I like that. Cole Beasley, you have to start him now. I mean, he's just too solid, Just so solid there, and he'll get some points against the Ravens D. Kareem Hunt I have versus a bad Bengals team. I think after the Cleveland's loss, they're going to start passing the running backs a little bit more again, and I can see Kareem Hunt getting a couple sneaky touchdowns. Jacoby Brissett versus the Buccaneers, bad secondary is possible. I like him playing if you need a quarterback. Cortland Sutton versus a bad Texans secondary. Now, they played well against the Patriots last week, but this is their letdown week. Zach Pascal versus the Buccaneers. They have the worst pass D in the league once again. I like what you said about Benny Snell. I love what you said about Ryan Tannehill, Dave. Ryan Tannehill is he can win your game this week against the Raiders' bad defense. AJ Brown, throw him with it. He had a bad game last week, but now he's going to have a rebound week possibly against the Raiders here. So A.J. Brown could win your fantasy playoffs. Darren Waller against the Titans. The Titans don't have the best secondary either. Love what you said about Alshon Jeffrey playing the Giants. He's terrible. And James White, he killed it last week, over 30-some points. He's going to play a bad Chiefs defense, and Tom Brady needs him. He's going to get a lot of pass catches. I love James White this week, Dave. So, going into bus for week 14, and Dave, I have all the 49ers running backs as a bust versus the Saints. And the Saints have one of the best rushing defenses in the game, but even Mostert, man, the Saints, they don't give up much on the ground. So the problem about the running backs is if Wilson comes back, I hear Brady's going to come back, and Coleman was a bit hurt, so he could be more healthy this week. I don't think it's just going to be one person there. So if you have to, use one of them, but I don't even know which one to use, man. So I think they're
a mess.
What's that?
Yeah, that backfield's a mess right now.
Yeah, especially when people are healthy. How great would a running back be there if just you had the rest of them were injured? I mean, that would be just a fantasy dream for the way the San Francisco runs the ball. Alvin Kamara, and he's playing the Niners defense, and he's another one. Now, you can't not start him, but I'm not super excited to start him, especially to pay for him in a DFS league. So Alvin Kamara is kind of like on the Patrick Laird. I do disagree with you on that one because the Jets' run defense is actually ranked number 1. Their pass defense is not that good. It's kind of a little worse than average, but their run defense still ranks number 1 in the league. So surprisingly, it seems like, why would they do that? Well, I guess their offense has just been so bad turning over the ball that they keep getting in trouble there. So I'm not sure if Laird's going to have a good game against the number 1 rush D. Jonathan Williams, the Buccaneers have a great run D as well. So I'm not excited to start Jonathan Williams this week. And the Colts, being at 6-6, are really hurting. Chris Carson versus the Rams. Not excited to start Chris Carson the way he's been fumbling too. And Bo Scarborough is a bust versus the Vikings run D. Who do you have for bust, Dave?
I agree with you a lot of those, actually. I definitely, the 49ers Saints game, I'd stay away from all those running backs in that game. I definitely agree with you on that. Even like Ravens, too, have a good defense. So I'm going to downgrade Josh Allen and Devin Singletary a little bit in that game against the Ravens' tough defense. And then I'm also downgrading the Chargers. The Jaguars' defense hasn't played like it has last year, but Rivers just didn't look that good this past week. He's looked a little out of sorts. He threw in some interceptions, some bad interceptions. So I'm downgrading Phillip Rivers as well against the Jaguars. And then I'm actually going to downgrade to the Chiefs running backs. I don't like them against the Patriots this week. Patriots have a great defense, so I'm downgrading them as well.
Yep. Patriots will be pissed off, too, from that loss as well, Dave. Well, agree with you there. Who's your nasty sleeper of the week that's going to win some fantasy football games for the playoffs in Week 14?
My D-nasty sleeper of the week is going to be Benny Snell from the Pittsburgh Steelers. If James Conner is out for a third straight week, Benny Snell is going to be my D-nasty sleeper of the week, and he's going to be the guy to take you to the fantasy gold this week in the playoffs.
There you go. I have 2 of them like you had last week, so I had to step my game up a little bit, Dave. So my number 1 is Devonta Freeman. I think he's going to have a hell of a game against the Panthers' bad run D. I think they're going to use him in Atlanta. And I think Zach Pascal is going to have a huge game for the Colts because they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. The Buccaneers is going to be throwing the ball a ton. That's what they do there. And I expect a high-scoring game. I expect Zach Pascal to get a ton of receptions this game. I think he's my sleeper, nasty sleeper of the week, my man. Any last thoughts for fantasy playoffs Week 14?
No, just good luck to everyone in the playoffs, and hopefully you make the right decisions this week.
All right, Dave, thanks again for coming on, my man. Good luck to you all playing your fantasy football this week. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and go get some winners.